With each commissioner member answering present. John Allison is excused.
No, he was supposed to be here.
Okay. Rebecca Burns, I believe, was excused.
Yes.
Dodie Hall.
Here.
Barbara Kelly.
Here.
Bill Stone.
Present.
Jacob Woods.
Present.
I'm Lynn Schubert, and we have a quorum present. Dr. Swope is the city's preservation specialist. Thank you to everyone who's attending today. Your involvement in the Commission's proceeding is vital to the effectiveness of this process. There's a copy of the agenda out front if you need one. Historic district designation means your neighborhoods have been recognized by the United States government, the state of Alabama, and the city of Decatur as being architecturally or historically significant to our communities. Historic districts are not created to prevent changes, but rather to ensure that the proposed changes are appropriate to the individual property and the districts as a whole. The Commission's responsibility is to review the appropriateness of all proposed changes. Each historic resource within the district is assessed on its own individual merits. What is appropriate for one property may not be appropriate for another based on resource, age, location, neighboring properties, and stylistic details. The Historic Preservation Commission's rulings are based on written standards and regulations that guide our review and decision-making. These guidelines and the Commission's decisions have the force of city ordinance. You can access our guidelines along with the application forms on the city's website. Our hearing process is as follows. Staff will present the applications. When she reads your name and the property address, please be prepared to come to the podium. Staff will present the application and staff assessment of each request. The staff assessment results from a review of the application from someone who exceeds federal qualifications as published in Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 61. When staff has finished presenting the application item, the applicant and/or the designated representative will then state their name and address and provide any additional information or comments regarding that application item. The Commission may ask clarifying questions of the applicant at this time. Next, we will hear any public comments on that particular application item only. After public comment is closed, the chair will entertain a motion and the Commission will discuss and dispense with that application item. Staff will then proceed to the next application item and so forth. An approved certificate of appropriateness will be issued in the form of an email that copies both the applicant and the building department approximately 1 week after the hearing. The document will outline and reaffirm what was approved and that the project has met the guidelines of the Commission. A certificate of appropriateness must be issued before a building permit can be obtained. If any changes to your project are anticipated after the certificate of appropriateness is issued, it is the responsibility of the homeowner to contact staff and she will help guide you. In some cases, you may be required to submit the changes for review and issuance of a new certificate of appropriateness. If your project is denied and you are not issued a certificate of appropriateness, you will be issued a letter stating the reasons for denial and additional information. Denied certificates of appropriateness will be sent via certified mail to the property owner's address filed with the Morgan County Revenue Commissioner's office. You may resubmit an application with revised plans at a future meeting. There is an appeal process for a denied COA as well, which is spelled out in the municipal ordinance under sections 18-25 and 18-92. After all applications are heard, the Commission will entertain general comments from the public, limited to 3 minutes per individual. Okay, the first item to review is approval of the February 10th, 2022 minutes. Any discussion, any changes?
To approve.
A motion by Bill Stone to approve.
Second.
Okay, second by Jacob Wood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, Caroline?
The first item is a COA for 204 Canal Street, Northeast, Mr. and Ms. Pike. The background on this, it's a one-story folk Victorian built circa 1887 and is in a contributing structure within the Bank Street Old Decatur National Register District. It is the last house on the southeast end of Canal Street before it intersects with Lee. The action requested, Mr. Pike has recently purchased the property and would like to complete the partial driveway. Curb cuts in existence, it's been used for parking for some time. You can sort of see the permanent ruts in the lawn. Applicant has an existing curb cut and would like a driveway. The application actually requests an aggregate pour solid, but after talking to staff, he's willing to install a ribbon driveway to keep it more in compliance with other driveways within the district, with either grass or a similar plant between the concrete ribbons. So the writing's upside down on this because I turned it so the street would be at the bottom, so it would make sense when you looked at it. Decatur's design review standards, landscaping, parking. Parking areas should be located at secondary elevations wherever possible. Parking lots and driveways should be screened by fencing or shrubbery or separate them from streets and adjacent structures. This particular lot has a park up against it. There is a landscaping strip with some sort of trees, and that's showing about the width of the driveway with that circle, but you see the existing shrubbery cover from the park, and there is essentially no rear yard. I mean, there is technically a rear yard, but I think the truck might actually fill the entire rear yard if he was to try to put it in there. So normally the commission looks at that. That's not really applicable here. The commission has historically requested exposed aggregate for new driveways in the district. The commission has also frequently requested ribbon driveways when appropriate to mitigate the addition of non-historic hardscape. Most ribbon driveways have a 36-inch grassy strip with a 2 to 3 foot wide concrete ribbon on each side. So he's got the stake out there so you can see it. That's the approximate crossing. That's it. And I will let Mr. Pike come up and take the podium, and if the commission has additional questions.
Eddie Pike, 204 Canal Street, Southeast.
Do you have any additional comments?
No, I think we're all together. Caroline have spoken several times, and
Okay.
we are going to take the sidewalk out and redo the sidewalk so it matches and makes it aesthetically pleasing. We'll do ribbon from the sidewalk up to the house. I think it's about 17 feet on this side and about 30 feet on the other side of the sidewalk.
Any commission members have any questions?
Thank you.
Any discussion among the commission? Not, do I have a motion?
And the motion needs to clarify that it's the amended COA with the
Okay.
ribbon, just so that's on there.
Yeah, I guess, looking at it, I know that there is a curb cut there and it's been used as a driveway. Really don't have any evidence that there was one there. I do know there's not enough room in the backyard or access from the alley to put one in there. And I have agreed to the washed aggregate concrete, and you're talking solid from the curb cut to the sidewalk. From the sidewalk past would be at least a 3 foot strip of grass. Correct. And then at least a 2 or 3 foot wide concrete.
I didn't understand that part, sorry.
The ribbon drive is from the sidewalk to wherever it stops, which is
Yes.
30 feet, you were saying?
Something like that?
And that's gonna be concrete, grass, concrete.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah. And I did want to say, I'm not sure, we may end up having to adjust or rework the cut off the sidewalk. There's some cracks in it. We're not sure yet if that's going to have to be replaced or at least repaired when we do that. We'll have to do something with the curb to make it work correctly.
Any other comments?
I would just say I would approve the COA with the amendment that it's gonna be a ribbon drive after the sidewalk.
Okay. Want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Second. Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
And let me know when you're ready to pour, and I'll get a yard sign up so that it goes in the yard and people know.
Probably meeting contractor next week, but we've got several months, right? Is there
A year.
a year?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Second COA, 714 Line Street Northeast, which is Mr. Peterson for Peterson Rentals is representing the property owner on this. This is an old Decatur. This is a one-story folk Victorian built circa 1902. It's a contributing structure within the Bank Street Old Decatur National Register District. Peterson Rentals managed this income-producing property. Unapproved work occurred on the porch columns, and staff had reached out to the company to discuss the project. And as the commission's aware, this was some time ago, and we've just been sort of trying to get back to it when they could get additional information. In this case, when you come up the stairs, the first two are intact and historic. The issue is, I don't know if you can see, there we go. The ones on the sides on each front corner, this is one of them, had rotted, and the way they had addressed that is they just sort of sawed the entire column off and then boxed them. And that was not meeting the district standards. So there's no way to find exact matches for these. So it will require a complete replacement of all 4 columns across the front. The applicant is requesting to replace, all 4 so they can exactly match. The Decatur's design review standards on this: architectural ornamentation 7. Architectural ornamentation such as gingerbread moldings, etc., are important character-defining elements of many historic buildings and should be retained. Repair architectural ornamentation should be retained and properly maintained. All repairs should match adjacent historic conditions and design, materials, and workmanship. Replacements in kind, where the architectural ornamentation must be replaced because missing or has deteriorated beyond reasonable repair, or in this case, can't be repaired. Replacement components should match adjacent or documented historic conditions in design, materials, and workmanship. So the commission has approved Afka fiberglass columns for at least one other house in the district, and I had actually made a site visit with the commission architect at that time, and that was John Godwin. We went to Gobble Fight to look at these, to try to figure out if there was a brand that would work, that didn't have seams, that when painted would mimic closely enough. And he deemed that one was appropriate based on the individual dimensions for each replacement. So if you could find one about the right size, he felt that it would work. Because the replacement columns are not going to be an exact match to what's there, that's why the request is to replace all 4 so that you don't have an odd break in your rhythm. And I had mentioned prior to the meeting that the commission, if they wanted to go to Gobble Fight, they did have some Afka columns on display, not necessarily this size, but they had some so you could at least look and see what they look like. Although the commission has discussed alternative materials, and you might recall we went through training on alternative materials with NACP last year, the standards have not been updated to reflect that. We expect that update this coming year with the CLG grant. So this request is similar to the one that was used in the January 2021 NACP training. And you recall they brought up one to sort of discuss when it is appropriate to allow these. I have been in discussion with Jacob, and he can fill you in a minute on what he was finding in terms of the dimensions and the tapers and what he wants to look at more closely. I think this is probably the best photo to leave up. So that is it for the staff portion. Garrett, I'll let you take the podium, and if there are any more questions.
So do we have a replacement column selected, or is it just?
Yes, sir, I brought a brochure
That
to
was-
Ms. Floyd.
Okay.
That was in the packet,
Okay.
so, yeah.
My bad.
And what it is these particular columns are the same measurement on the bottom as they are on the top. Just about anything you can buy now in a wood column is gonna be larger on the bottom and thinner on the top, at this length. They're 90 inches tall. This is as close to the original trim as I could find anywhere. And I know they'll never rot, and they do look in kind. So about all I can say is, if you don't approve me, I'm gonna need some help from somebody.
Just on that fact, I did go on just to start off with, the AFCO product, I do not have a issue with, as long as we can find something that's close to what's existing. According to their website, they do make a Procast smooth, non-tapered column that can be bought in a 8-foot length.
That's exactly.
You'll have to trim it down, but there are some details on that. I cannot approve the column that was submitted, but if we look at the non-tapered 10-inch, which has a dimension or the shaft dimension is really close to what's existing. It's 9 5/8, this one's 9.
Yes,
So if we can change to that detail, and we may be able to work through that with Caroline,
that'd be agreeable with me.
I would.
And plus,
I would be okay with that.
the bases, I don't know if you, well, the picture's not up here. The original bases are like 4 inches tall. As where, anything else you're gonna buy is gonna be a thinner base, 1.5 to 2 inches. And of course, we'll build that up and make it matching like it used to be when we take the other columns down. And no, I didn't have a hand in the junior carpentry picture you saw there. I'm actually one of the contractors for Peterson Reynolds, and I'm here representing Arthur Orr, because he's in session all week this week, so he sends his apologies and asked me to be here to represent him. So, the rental place sent another crew out, and they didn't have any idea about historical rules, regulations, anything else, so they went and chopped 2 of them off where you couldn't even fix them. And she called me over there and said, "Can you do anything?" I said, "Not magic." So,
Garrett's been really good. I've worked with him on some other rental properties on Line Street, so he's normally my go-to connection to, and he actually had a wood window built from scratch for one of the houses. So he's really, as long as he's in the loop, we normally are good.
well, I'll be the one doing the work on this, because we can't have
Yeah.
any more of this going on, so.
And
Did you say non-tapered?
Yes, that means
Correct.
the shaft is straight. It's, according to his dimensions, it's 9 inches at the top and the bottom.
Yes, sir. Well, there's I guess you can see it here, it's the same at the top as it is at the bottom, and I don't really know who came up with that idea, but wasn't mine. I would have repaired what was there, but I was just too busy, and I thought a couple of posts you can give to these guys, they can take care of it. But they won't be working in the historical district for us anymore.
Any other questions?
Non-tapered?
The straight look, the picture is what he's talking about.
I think they need to be tapered.
That's not what's on there.
Yeah, the original columns were non-tapered, Bill.
Yes, I mean, that's what's,
That's why I was saying it was so hard to find.
that's
them
what's
in
on
wood.
there now,
Right.
the 2 that are
Right,
not.
they're all non-tapered, these have just been cut off instead of repaired properly and bases fixed and all, so I just have to get rid of all of it now and put something back. The ones I'm looking at, they have the ring here, of course, we'll build the bases to be the right height and all that stuff, and then they have the ring at the top and the trimmer on the top, so they look pretty much exactly the same, but they're just gonna be new and sleek, and they'll look nice on the porch.
And they won't rot. Right.
Yeah.
Is there any reason to earmark this as sort of a test case, since is this the first time we're using this
it's
material?
the first time we've had them on a contributing house. I think we approved them on a non-contributing house a couple years ago. So if you want this to be a test and to not be a blanket, just to sort of see how they work, how they look, give them a couple years, we can certainly do that, because we've done tests with windows, we've done tests with other products, so.
And this product will hold paint very well too. When you prime it and put it on properly, it'll hold paint well. You're not gonna come by in a couple of years and see it all peeling off, even though it's in direct afternoon sun.
Yeah. Would you mind kind of keeping an eye on it for us and checking back in and letting us know
You know,
if you see any issues with it?
I have to go over there 2 or 3 times a year for different properties, you know, just for what she manages. And, so I don't mind a bit.
That would be great.
I used to be a preferred contractor for the historical society when I was young, but I just got too busy, and so.
Don't abandon us.
Well, I'm older, I don't do as much. I got a real strong finger, because I do all, you go, and you do it.
You delegate
I
well.
don't actually do a whole lot of it right now. So
Delegate.
it's a lot easier to get around and check on things like that. If you want me to, have a regular schedule, Caroline, you can contact me, and
Yeah, you and I can touch base and visit it, because we're already over there looking at other projects, so we can catch
Okay.
up a couple times a year and see how it looks. And
No
I can take
problem.
pictures and keep the commission informed.
Any other questions, comments? I have a motion?
Well, how do we set this up?
We need a motion that clarifies the final dimensions will be cleared with the commission architect before the COA is signed off on to ensure that it's the right dimensions.
Because they do have to be ordered,
Yeah.
so.
So we're not gonna have him order something that's not the right dimensions, so that would be one where we make sure that the commission architect, and just to keep it easy, we might all go down to gobble fight together.
So I'll make a motion that the replacement columns can be the Afka material, but final dimensions of the columns need to be approved prior to ordering with the staff and the commission architect.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta get upstairs to driving school now.
We're glad you stopped by.
I will.
Thanks, Senator Woodruff, for bringing it back
I'll
into
call him when I get
compliance,
outside.
yeah. So,
Take care, Bill.
Okay.
third COA, this is 504-510 Walnut Street, Herfford. The background on this, it is a double lot. The prior house at 510 was removed by prior owners. Minutes from that meeting state, Mr. Hennessy was reminded that any future landscaping on the site, trees, gardens, paths, fence, water features, structures, etc., have to be approved by COA. In early March 2020, staff conducted site visit, determined work had occurred without a COA. So that's pre-demolition. This is the remains of what was Mr. Hennessy left. Staff notified Mr. Hennessy, who was on tax records. He and his son were jointly owning this property. At that point, the fence had just gone up, nothing else. And so he put in a retroactive COA, and then also submitted a COA asking for the HPC to have approval for a proposed gravel driveway. And without waiting for the HPC meeting, Mr. Hennessy installed the proposed gravel driveway. So he was notified in April of 2020 that the unauthorized driveway was out of compliance and would have to attend the HPC's meeting. In the May meeting that year, the commission conducted 2 votes. The first was to allow the current driveway as installed. The second was to allow the non-approved 6-foot fence to run across the front of the lot as installed with a double gate. Both motions failed to carry, 0 votes in favor. So the commission found that the parking area didn't meet HPC standards because there was access to the rear of the property from the alley, and the commission found the location of the fence was not appropriate for a 6-foot tall dog-eared fence, and the applicant could move the fence further back if he wanted that style, or reduce the height of the fence, and Mr. Hennessy did not appeal. Staff and the commission chair offered to meet with him on site. Staff followed up in summer. Mr. Hennessy declined to work with staff or the commission architect, and a court summons was issued. Mr. Hennessy sold the property before the court summons was served, and the new owners, the Herffords, were not notified by the sellers that the property was not in compliance with a city ordinance, and did not find out until after they purchased the house. Current owners were notified by certified letter on 1/21 and 4/21 that the property was out of compliance. Mr. Herfford met with staff and commission architect shortly thereafter, and with the full commission on 6/21. Certified letters sent out got a 25 in there, and I know it wasn't 6/25. On 6/21, and a reminder that they were on the agenda. The December HPC meeting was held. Herfford did not attend. A certified letter was a follow-up with an extension until February. That letter was refused and came back to sender. An email was sent out. And COA was resubmitted the end of February. So the fence and the driveway are currently non-compliant. But we have a COA from Mr. Herfford. The commission had asked for pictures of the site. So this is the house. There is the fence. This is the rear of the property with the fence. This was taken right after construction, so it's grayed out a little bit now. This is the proposal that Mr. Hennessy has sent. Mr. Herfford, two H's, Mr. Herfford has sent in. So he has submitted a COA for the driveway, and he is proposing removing the pea gravel entirely and replacing it with an exposed aggregate, essentially a double wide driveway. It's 22 feet wide, adjacent to the house, and then adding shrubbery to screen it on the east with a single tree planted and a line of bushes. The applicant does not have additional information on the proposed landscaping at this time. He's indicated that he would like a meeting with a professional horticulturalist or landscaper. And then there was a letter that was in your packet addressing the fence. So design review standards for Decatur for landscaping, parking areas should be located at secondary elevations wherever possible. Parking lots and driveways should be screened by fencing or shrubbery to separate them from streets and adjacent structures. For fencing, within the district's cast iron and wood picket fences are typically found upon principal street vantages. Brick, chain link, wooden plank, and other wood fences are generally located at secondary street vantages. Height, principal street vantages should be no higher than 3 feet. Fences on readily visible secondary vantages should be no higher than 6 feet. Wood fences, the use of wooden picket fences on principal is appropriate, and then it goes on with other fences, chain link, wire, wood plank, vinyl, solid brick, or open weave fences along street vantages is not appropriate. The use of these materials is appropriate at secondary vantages, and that's essentially from the center of the house back in terms of material, in terms of size. That can vary based on the commission rulings. They have looked at some of those materials for alleys only. Staff findings, the driveway, the original ruling, and I had attached minutes. The commission stated the driveway needed to go in the rear of the property by the garage since the lot had ample room for parking in the rear and alley access. There was a curb cut. It was to service the now demolished house. The yard was not used as a driveway at the time of demolition, nor did 504 have a curb cut because this particular property had its own existing rear garage. Street parking is abundant because now there's significant street frontage with a double lot. Fencing Commission has consistently ruled that the middle point of side elevations, taking into account character-defining features like windows and mechanical features like HVAC, the massive length of the fence with a contemporary dog-eared profile is unprecedented within the district on this front elevation. There are some that were built before the district and quite a number of rear yards. This is pretty standard fence in rear yards, but not the massive proportions along the Main Street elevations. The fence next door is tall, but it is a decorative wooden fence. The application has not addressed the double wide gate to the back lot. The commission did ask me about that. There is a double wide gate here that opens, and what will happen with that when the driveway is removed from the portion of the lot. So I will let Mr. Herfford, the right name, come up, and the mic is there.
Hello again. I would like to apologize first for the December absence. Things got crazy and it slipped my schedule, so I very much apologize for that.
Any questions? Do you have a? I guess my question, Caroline pointed out that what you're proposing is basically a double wide parking pad.
Correct.
On the front of, right there in the front.
On the side of the
On the
house.
side of the house, but right there on the street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at our design guidelines which say, if possible, parking should be in the rear of the house. And it's certainly possible with your house. You've even got a garage.
There is zero chance. I mean, I don't own my vehicle. It's a work truck. I could not pull my truck into the garage. There's not even close to enough space back there to do that. As well with my wife, there is a liquor store and a used car lot one property over, and it would not, I would not feel comfortable with her coming in from the back of the house if she gets back at night or something. I mean, there's not always people strolling around in the alleyway or on our street, but there have been, and I would just feel much more comfortable if she was entering and exiting from the front where there's street lights and more traffic more eyes, potentially to ward off an opportunist.
Would it be possible to reduce the size of the thing?
The
The width?
I mean, how far? What do you?
Well, I mean, Kelly, you said this is like a double wide, what's a normal
So the commission
driveway?
had asked for a standard ribbon driveway, for me to research that. Standard, they're about 9 feet wide, and that's what the commission has approved historically
And this is how many
recently.
feet?
22.
15 or
22.
20.
So basically double, it would be, I mean, and let me first say, we appreciate you coming to work with the commission. I know that you didn't know about this, but what I think the historic overlay and the control of the commission basically is analogous to zoning. So I think that's why we're still looking at it, and we appreciate you being willing to come and do this. I think the fact that you didn't know about it or whatever, you may be, you know, what I'm trying to do is figure out how we can help you out without making a ruling that we can't defend later on. I mean, and
Okay.
I don't know, you know, if everybody could do a 22-foot wide driveway,
So
it would change the district.
if I can sort of maybe explain the way I kind of see this, and I shared this in the letter that I believe, maybe not to the level of detail, but with Ms. Swope, that I still believe, after reviewing and having others review the city code and supporting documentation from the Historic Commission, that the work that's done cannot be penalties, fines, whatever they may be, would not be able to be held against me for the work that was done by another. So the position that I'm coming from with the COA is, it's my understanding that gravel driveway would be considered a, excuse me, would be considered a intrusive element, and the design review guidelines, it, you know, says that intrusive elements should be made compatible, and I think that structure, that parking structure, would be compatible with other examples. Now, I know it's not historically approved or approved per the design review guidelines historically, but there are examples of parking pads at least that wide in the neighborhood, and that was my thought on that width.
Any other questions?
Well, I think, I do know of a couple as well that I've seen. However, I don't believe that they were approved by the commission. Certainly not in my time. And I think, other than Bill, I'm the old man on the group now. I mean, I've been on the commission for how many years? I don't know. Anyway, in that amount of time, I don't think I've seen a double parking pad approved. And I think what everyone has to understand, first off, we do have to go by those design review guidelines. That's what we have to, whether we think something will look good or not, can't enter into our equation. And I think what Lynn is trying to say, the other thing we have to be cognizant of is precedent. And indeed, this is the type of change, if everyone were allowed to make a drive this large, it would change the rhythm and character of the district. So I would be personally, since there is a curb cut, since you could put a driveway by the house where it's not as intrusive, I've got no problem with the driveway being there. I think it would be appropriate. I hear what you're saying, that even though you do have rear access, you've got larger vehicles like the one that you have, it would be difficult, if not impossible.
Impossible.
I hear what you're saying. So in that case, I understand that. Because that's one that we have. It says where possible, we want to see rear access. But I think you've got, that. I hear your argument there.
And
So I would be amenable to from the front, but I just don't see how we could approve that large of a parking pad.
so I do understand the precedent. I don't, I don't want to change. I certainly wouldn't want to inspire the change in the historical makeup of the neighborhood at all. What I'm seeing this as though is a move from a full lot circular drive to a much smaller straight driveway. It does have space for 2 vehicles, but it's a movement towards compatible, which is my understanding of what the goal would be for an element such as what's currently in place.
I would add to that, I know in the historic district, there's a lot of houses that can't have driveways at all. And on-street parking is a big part of the historic district. There's a lot of people that have to do that. And with you owning a house and a vacant lot beside you, you have a large access to on-street parking that's available. Have you had any issues with parking the car on the street?
Not necessarily, but I mean, people come up and down our street, sometimes the wrong way. It's a pretty common turnoff from 6th Avenue. I just, has it happened yet? No. Has anything happened yet? No. But again, it doesn't seem like it would be a crazy occurrence for someone not paying attention to hit my vehicle, or traffic coming to or from the liquor store to, walking on the street to try a door handle or something like that. Whereas if it's back up off, it's not quite as, it's more conspicuous if you walk off, the street to get to something than not.
I mean, let me say this. I've lived in the neighborhood for 40 years, and there have been some break-ins, but not many. And not as many as you would think with all the street parking.
Sure.
And we park on the street. You got to lock your car. But, yes, it's a fear. It's a fear. A tree may fall on your house because there are trees around. But I'm trying, there's certain issues with living in a historic neighborhood. It doesn't have the double wide carport. We don't have that sort of thing.
There are examples, and I know they're not everywhere, and they're not necessarily on what was previously the front of a house. But there are. I mean, our catty corner neighbors have a double wide parking on Wells Street. No, I guess we're not on Wells Street, but if you go up to Wells Street, the catty corner to us has a double wide parking, and then there's another parking pad just up Wells Street, and then another one farther back down on one of the east-west streets. I can't remember which one, but
Carolyn, were they approved? Did the commission approve those?
I could not find any when I researched back. That doesn't mean that there weren't, but I went and pulled records looking. So there's certainly been nothing recent. Everything recent has been single, and the commission has been moving towards exposed aggregate, and even Hollywood, the ribbon driveways when possible, just like the one that y'all just approved a few minutes ago. That's been, so.
Well, and in the last couple of months, we've had a plethora of people who are dealing with driveways, and we're asking them to come in.
Yeah.
And they're not nearly as wide as what you're wanting.
okay. I'm not familiar with the examples, but I would, ask the question: the other concrete driveways, whether approved or not, what were they coming from? Were they coming from a yard? Were they just plain yard before with no curb cut, or what? Because there is a parking structure in place here that I think the commission has stated that very much not approve of, that they would consider intrusive, and that this would be something much less, regardless of the width, much less intrusive and maybe compatible with the neighborhood. It is wide, but it's also got a full lot that you're judging it against, not a narrow space between your house and another house. So it wouldn't have the same impact as maybe one of the examples that you referenced. I don't know though.
I mean, to my mind, the proximity to the house with double cars parked there, it's not the distance, I think, between the houses, it's how how much car is here and how much house is here, because your house is not that wide, it's probably wider than 22 feet, but, so we've got car parking and house.
I also hear what you're saying, but it makes it difficult for us to say, okay, here's our guidelines. We know something that's there is inappropriate, but I want to approve something that's still inappropriate but might look better. I mean, that's
We
really.
kind of have to, what the Hennessy's did, we kind of have to just put that put that to the side when I agree with you. Most anything would look better than what they did, but it's, you know, I hear what you're saying as far as it would look better, but we have to judge your own proposal on its own merits and as opposed to
Right.
look at it as, you know, what you're gonna do.
Any comments? Any comments?
And I do understand that. I would like to comment to, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Mr. Woods.
Yes.
You were not here at the last meeting I attended, I don't believe, and not that that's really important, but it does say in the design review guidelines that the goal for intrusive buildings, and I take that to mean intrusive features maybe even, would be to make them compatible. And compatible does not mean contributing. It's compatible. It's non-contributing, but not a flagrant violation of the historic character of the neighborhood, which I believe that would not be seen as, I strongly believe that would not be something that someone sees and goes, oh gosh, that's not my Decatur, you know, whereas the full gravel parking loop pad is that for many.
Which reference are you making for the intrusive, do you remember?
It's on page 2 of the design review guidelines.
They're saying non-contributing properties, those are houses.
Well, that's I mean, that's the comment that I just made. It references
Yeah.
buildings, but I imagine that would be,
No, they're addressing National Register standards on this, and National Register standards are you have contributing or non-contributing, and it's literally the buildings that are contributing and non-contributing.
so how do you, is there a classification for non-building elements?
No, for this, it goes back to the standards, because they're looking at they're starting from scratch on this. So they're not looking at what is existing there, which is the pea gravel. They have to look at what is proposed on its own, the same way as if there was no pea gravel there. Like their review's gonna be the same either way.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Understand.
I guess my question back to you is, given the concerns that we have, and I will also mention that the Code of Alabama also says, a Historic Preservation Commission shall approve an application and issue a certificate of appropriateness if it finds that the proposed change, erection, or demolition conforms to the general design standards established by the commission, which we have, we've discussed those, is compatible with the character of the historic property or historic district, and does not detract from the value of the historic property or historic district. In making this determination, the commission shall consider, in addition to any other pertinent factors, the historic and architectural features involved and the proposed change thereto, and the relationship thereof to the exterior architectural style and pertinent features of other structures in the immediate neighborhood. Now, this is not a structure.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think we're really you may not think it, but we're generally trying to help you out. But please understand, and I appreciate so much you coming, and agreeing to do this, that if we say, okay, you can have a 22-foot driveway, okay, I can put a 22-foot driveway maybe in my backyard. I don't have the side yard with 22 feet in it. I mean, I can't deny anybody else. And there are a lot of people who, and that's the main issue I think that I'm hearing.
We're hearing more and more requests for driveways.
We've got design review guidelines that we have to follow. We can't just say, that's prettier than what you had. That's prettier than the gravel.
Or
That's not what we're
because
here
you-
to say, but it's
Or
pretty.
because you have a vacant lot, we can make yours wider than anybody else's. Our hands are
That's
tied.
what I'm saying.
I
Would you
do understand
consider, making it slightly smaller and working, and I think we had some questions on, what exactly the landscaping is gonna be and, the fencing.
Yes, and I haven't pulled quotes because I didn't want to, go do all this before, potentially getting
Understand.
approved, and so
Yeah, I
that's the
understand.
reason for that. But when you say slightly smaller, I'm assuming you mean half the
Probably a
size.
single car
Okay.
parking.
So
Probably a ribbon.
Okay, there's,
Yeah, well, what was the one that we just did?
What is a ribbon
the
drive?
ribbon.
I think a lot of the ones we've done recently have been ribbon.
Yeah, the last meeting was a ribbon too.
Yeah.
I think the key thing for approval would be maybe showing that, and then maybe showing how it's screened, how the landscape works to hide that. Because that's kind of the rhythm of the district is driveway, house, no driveway, just there's a rhythm that you're trying to maintain. That's where that screening comes in.
So given, it sounds like, I assume with his large work truck, there is a concern on size. Is that something I can get specs from other municipalities on ribbon driveway widths, and we can ensure that his truck with its wheelbase would fit on there?
I think the wheelbase would not be, I don't know what y'all's criteria would be for a ribbon driveway wheelbase, but I don't think the wheelbase of the truck is anything outlandish. It's mainly the length that I would not be able to pull in.
Length of the truck itself.
Correct. And wheelbase plays a small part of that because the garage is only so wide, but as far as the ability to park the truck in the back, that was my concern, was the length, not necessarily the wheelbase.
It's not a dually or anything.
No.
Okay, so that wasn't a factor in that, because I was thinking, I was wondering if that's the case, that Jacob and I could work with him off that to make sure that whatever ribbon driveway might go in, that it fits the needs of
Absolutely.
what you've got.
I think
Yes.
from the back is the turning radius, because I believe the garage is pretty close to the alley. And
Correct.
making that turn and getting in there is tight.
And in addition, I didn't mention this earlier, but I meant to, was that used car lot often has vehicles parked across the exit of that alley and make it very difficult or impossible to pass through. Not always, but there have been times where I've had to back all the way back down the alley after dropping something off in the back.
Is that a community development issue?
And that'd be police, if they're blocking
Police?
an alley.
I'm called police.
Okay.
Okay. If that alley is used, but,
It is, it's a municipal alley. I can
Okay.
give you the non-emergency number for police so that if it happens again, they will
Okay.
assist you with
and
that.
enough, probably citations on it, it won't happen.
Well, I've just, not been back there is my method of dealing with that. So if I am back there and I experience it again, I can report that, but,
Is there, and your fence comes like kind of into the middle of your house.
correct.
Is there a way to extend that fence back? And I know it's like movement of it to where you can get two cars.
Vertically?
The
Yeah,
length of your
behind the
truck may
in
be an
line.
issue, and that may just be a street parking thing.
I don't think that would be, at that point, I would put my truck on the street, with those concerns in mind, because, you never know if I'm gonna need to get out or my wife's gonna need to get out. She can't.
We deal with that all the time. It's like, the keys go in the bowl on the chest by the door.
Well,
So
and
everything
if I pull in, I drive a work vehicle,
Yeah.
company vehicle, and she wouldn't be able to use that if I was blocking her in, but, no, I don't think that inline would be something we'd really consider.
Okay. All right. What about the fence? Is there any way to, saying that's, whatever we decide on the driveway, we'll kind of do that. Is there any way to stain it, put bushes in front of it? To where it's not such a concern on the
There are
height?
those bushes, I never remember the name of them, but they're growing, and they're not super fast growing, but, they're moving up for sure. It's
It's a
not.
row of arborvitaes that are in front of
Okay, just
it.
right there, or is it all?
I
Well,
think
there's
one
a
of them,
gate
I think one of them died, but then there is a gate. So what, in the proposal that was just shown up on the screen, you know, potentially having a tree in that side lot would definitely screen the fence more. It would screen the parking more, but also having a strip of bushes or some other sort of screening along the drive as well. I don't know, I'm hesitant to stain anything before I have, you know, assurance that the fence is good where it is. I would hate to stain it and then have to take it out for some reason, but.
I guess what I'm trying to put out there, and y'all may, if you would agree to, you know, say, okay, if y'all approve it, leave the fence there, and here's options, and you would agree to that, I think the commission might, you know, I don't know, I can't speak for them.
Well,
Might approve it, but,
I'm not proposing, this certificate of appropriateness does not address the fence, so I'm not seeking approval for the fence, I'm not seeking any change for the
Yeah,
fence.
I noticed that. It
Okay.
looks like that's not even.
So that again holds with my position that that whatever changes were made when I got it, you know, are not binding to me in terms of penalties. I also think that fence is halfway back on the structure, like the design review guidelines show. While it is long and it's street facing, there are other examples of 6-foot fences that not only are on the street, facing the street, but come right up to the sidewalk. And that's been something that's frustrating with this particular point, because that is halfway back. It's I think 45 feet off the road, 35 feet off the back of the sidewalk roughly, maybe 33. That's a substantial distance, and I think its intrusiveness is mostly because it's a long area, also because there's no screening at all from it if you're coming up the street. But the fence itself is in line with the neighbor's fence. It's halfway back on the structure. It's not, there's nothing in the review guidelines that would
I
say
agree that it
that's.
meets the neighbor's fence that was existing.
To me, there's nothing in the design review guidelines that would disqualify this fence from being approved if I was to seek approval today. So, I mean, I would like to put the fence behind this. You know, if a staining would help, I would be open to doing that. But again, I think that if we,
We're not doing that.
Yeah, let's just, we can table that.
Yeah, well, but then you don't address the fence.
Just, we're talking about drive there.
Yeah.
So,
Now, in this, there's you have landscape? but
I had some very non-detailed details. So, directly on the edge of the parking pad would be some bushes. I don't know, you know, exactly what they would be. I was thinking, you know, around 4 feet, you know, tall potentially, and spanning the length to the fence. The existing landscaping along the fence would remain the same, and also potentially planting a tree there to soak up some of the visual field that's currently directed all at the fence. Again, if this driveway, well, yeah, the tree the tree happens if we change the driveway to be next to the house, so.
Any other?
I think for me, it's hard to approve the non-details. I mean, with all the options, or could be this, could be that, could be this high, that high. Without some definites, it's really hard to say.
well,
Going
we've been burned kind of in the past lately, hard, I think.
So,
Given kind of latitude, so we kind of, I think what I'm hearing is that I think we're wanting to work with you on the driveway.
okay.
And the landscape, but we might need a little more information.
Okay, so with that in mind, what would be acceptable screening for a driveway? I mean, are there certain specs that you're looking for, like a certain height or a certain density of leaf cover or what? Because I can go pull something and get denied and come back and get denied again. Or if I have something to work off of, I can go pick from available options.
I don't know that we need to go there. I mean, we're still dealing with the width of this thing and the mass of this thing, aren't we?
So maybe we
Okay.
just address the driveway tonight?
I'm sorry?
Maybe we just address the driveway tonight?
One COA.
That's one COA
it's
for the
submitted.
landscaping and the
Okay.
drive together.
Now, we could structure it an approval for a ribbon driveway not to exceed X number of feet. And I know there's a power line in front of that house, so that will impact, they're not gonna, this is not a big canopy tree that would go in there probably because of that power line.
And that, again, I did draw it farther kind of back
Yeah.
than maybe would be preferred because of that power line.
And that might be something that the commission architect and staff can work with him once he has a final list, so that it's not, you know, we had the challenges of some other properties before where there were specs laid and then it didn't go out, so that we can then sign off on the final. And that's then it give him X amount of months to, you know, complete the work. And with planting, I would say make sure it runs to the end of fall, just to give him time for planting season if he misses exactly what's going on now.
What you're saying basically, if I'm understanding, is, you know, more or less in the locations that he's indicated, but he would perhaps work with staff and architects.
If the commission is amenable to that, we could do that. That way he wouldn't have to come back. It would be an amended COA, which we've done before. So the amended COA would give the width of the driveway, or even a range. You know, sometimes you give a little foot extra just so we can get there and wiggle with it. And then we can meet on site with the commission architect. We can meet on site to field verify that everything is good. If the commission wants to address additional landscaping in front of those double gates on the fence, that's an option. If, you know, and getting an idea that you want screening that is analogous with what else is in the district, staff architect and I can double check and see what's gonna keep the rhythm going. And we can come up with some options for him that then he can work with a nursery on to get whatever it is. And then that way, the signature would go on once we agreed with the staff architect on site, a commission architect on site. And the commission would give their approval for that to occur after it meets that.
Okay, so we're looking for amended,
It would be amended, and it would address the driveway, and it would address the final signatures not going on it until we met with Mr. Herfford on site to make sure that that was all lined up, and then that would allow that to go without him having to come back in front of the commission. And the commission does that. That happens several times a year. We have one where, normally with the bigger projects like Duper, we've done a lot of those. The Colemans, we did a lot of those, where we didn't want to have to bring them back in. They just need some assistance on site, and so we can just meet them on site, and as long as the commission's okay with that.
So this would be an final approval of an amended COA that says,
It would be finalized once we meet up with you and make sure that like whatever ribbon driveways there is gonna accommodate the width.
so it would be a ribbon driveway COA then, that,
That's, if that's what I'm hearing, yeah. And it would be and that way you wouldn't have to come back in front of the commission, and we could have it signed off within a week probably, or less, depending on schedules.
I think I would like to discuss that with my wife, first before I, subscribe to that, so I'm okay with coming back in front of the commission.
I think we're kind of letting you
Generally.
know
yeah.
what we're all
I
looking
think
for.
what I'm
Sure.
hearing too,
If you want-
and my concern is the width of that driveway.
Understood.
I mean, I think that's the main issue. The fence doesn't give me near as much heartburn.
And I do think even, you know, I know you're not as concerned about the fence, but once there's other stuff over in that side of the yard, it will detract from the imposingness of the fence, however much it is.
Right.
But I mean, I hear the commission, and I'm willing to go review with my wife and see if we can come up with something that would have the potential to be approved.
That's always, what do we call
You need
this?
to vote for it.
So
You just table it. and
Table
hold
it till
until
next-
Comes
next
back,
month.
table it. Do we need
Have a
vote on
motion to
tabling?
table.
Do we need a motion?
Anything else that comes up, because if he wants to change something and amend it in another way, I don't know, you may have to,
Okay.
it would just be for this amendment to table it. You can't really make any more changes till he comes back, but, so that he
Okay.
knows when the date everything is, so that this doesn't get,
Well, if he and his wife want to put forth something else, that would be a
Sure.
new COA.
right, that's up to them if they
But
want to do that.
as we're, is that, am I
as
understanding?
the COA is presented now, we're gonna table it. If they wanna make any changes, except, I mean, if they wanna make any changes, it'd be new COA.
And then at that point, we'll,
See about amending it, because we haven't amended it yet. We're just gonna table
We're
it
just
at
gonna
this
table
point.
And I'd like to take the amending onto myself, if that's all right, just so, but before we table, the design review guidelines are not clear on what screening shrubs would be. It's very, very loose, very vague on that front, so is there a reference that I could use for what would be considered approvable? Is there a range of heights, a range of species that I could?
John, what do you normally?
I think in the standards of landscaping, it addresses native plants or plants that will handle the,
The
plant,
zone we live in.
plant zone, plant, where's my plant person?
I mean,
What are they called?
I think it's almost.
USDA, is it USDA plant
It
zone?
states that they,
Yeah.
the material should be native to
Zone
North
seven.
Carolina, compatible with climate requirements.
Yeah. And then for screening in particular, I think we don't have this come up very often because we don't have these double wide lots. But they probably are looking for something that's not, 1 foot tall.
Sure.
And they don't want something so tall that it becomes a fence in and of itself. So they don't want to see like a row of camellias that at that point you really have bifurcated the yard because you've put in these giant bushes that just chop it. There's probably a range of stuff that maxes out around 4 feet-ish, so people can still see over.
So is that, I mean, that's
That gives you a lot
that's
of
what I had in
opportunity.
mind was 3 to 4 feet.
Yeah,
If that would be, that's definitely a
Yeah.
narrow range to look for.
and I
so.
think for the tree, there's lots of possibilities. I think the bigger issue is whatever's gonna go in with a landscaper saying, hey, that's great, but you got a power line here and we're gonna have to.
And
Right.
the further back you can get it if you've got a tall tree, otherwise Decatur Utilities will butcher
Yes, they will.
it,
Okay.
as they have in other parts of the neighborhood.
On that subject there, and I see it's on the agenda, at least I think it's the same thing. We got something dropped off in our mailbox about the historic street trees. I don't know what that program does, if that would be
Oh,
applicable
Historic
here.
Decatur Association, that is on pause right now. They're not working on that currently.
Okay,
Um,
I'd be very interested if they
He's not
were.
a landscape
Yeah,
architect, but Vernon
I
Offer.
said that would be smart.
I'm sorry?
I said you can get a free tree if you.
That's
pick on
the idea.
Yeah, but and right now they only do medians and they don't do yards, but they have paused that program as they're working with the city on it. But
Yeah.
the most recent version was medians only.
Do you
and
know how long it's on pause for?
Probably a year or more.
Oof.
But a tree's not that much, so,
Vernon Offer, he'll give you some range of things. He's not a landscape architect or,
And how do you spell that?
I think it's Vernon, Offerd, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about?
I know you're
I mean,
talking about,
we
he's a
have-
horticulturalist.
He- Yeah, he'll, for $130, $100 to $150, you can get it's not big, it's gonna grow.
Sure.
Planted. I mean, that was big for me.
I
Planted.
have his contact info
So I don't
if
have
you'd
to-
like it.
I'm sorry?
I have his contact info if you would
Yeah.
like. it.
Yes, I would.
And,
I'll get it down for you.
that's not a huge expense.
It's a Valley Landscape
What is,
nursery.
Better just to call his cell phone.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But I'll give you his contact
Yeah,
info.
she'd have that.
Let me pull it up.
Okay, then I need a motion to table.
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
If you want to reconsider it, I would put the date that you want to table it until, which means
Okay.
so that that's clear, so he knows when to be back, because if he's not here and
Do
you
you want
deny
to
it.
amend your motion to table?
I probably need to check the calendar. I'm traveling for work a couple times next month, so I don't know yet, but
Wanna have 'em-
You want to say 60 days? Or?
Yeah, you wanna give 2 months, and then that
Okay.
way it'll give you a little extra time.
Okay, so is our motion to table amended to include that?
And is it to be in front of the commission in 2 months, or to have a COA back in front of the commission in 2 months? Those are two different things.
What's your preference?
my preference would be the larger amount of time, but that's just for,
To have a COA,
Flexibility.
have a 2 months.
Then just to have the COA, and then you've
Yeah.
got time for another meeting.
Got it.
Second? No, so moved and seconded? Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
What I have in the minutes is that it's tabled and that he will have a COA returned within 2 months. Not on the agenda in 2 months, but there will be a COA that is complete in my hand in 2
2
months.
months from today's date.
Today, yeah.
That way it's specific, he knows.
all right?
We're good?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
You'll have to leave multiple messages. You'll have to leave multiple
Oh,
messages. It
okay.
takes him a while. So. Okay. We're going to move Preservation Month planning to the end of the agenda. I have staff updates and compliances. 301 Oak, a letter went out on this one. It has not met its deadline. And the applicant was informed of the next steps if they do not remove it in the next month.
This is the metal carport.
Yes, this is the metal carport. I had calls on a compliance today, never a dull afternoon. It's just to update you with everything I've got. You're aware on Grant Street, you have 2 roundabouts and they each have these really large full hollies. The one on 8th, somebody decided they didn't like it blocking their view and they took hedge clippers to it. This happened in the last day or so. So these pictures I just took this afternoon. So Park and Rec is aware of it. It will be at least cleaned up. But it obviously no longer looks like that. So the city is working on it, legal is working on it, to make sure that it is addressed. The other staff updates, federal grant, I was with the team at the Princess a couple of weeks ago that came in for the HSR. It was amazing. I was there all day. So they had 3 engineers on site and an architectural conservator all day.
Wow.
And they came in from as far away as Atlanta. So Atlanta, Prattville, Birmingham. So they crawled literally from one end of that building to the other. I mean, they put on their little overalls and they were gone. And just checking all the structure and everything. We'll be getting a draft report in a few months. I also, since I had their ear, they've also seen Old State Bank and asked for advice on some of the things there. And we also went by the Carnegie and Delano Park and just had discussions about other projects and other things we should be looking at. Albany resurvey, I think she's almost finished with the field portion on that. I've been talking to Jamie. Girl Scout house update, some of you may have noticed the little house, the landscaping has been removed around it. They're getting ready to do wood repair and paint sometime this spring, and then we will circle back with more appropriate landscaping later. Historic Decatur Association street signage project, working on that, but that is taking a lot of time with me working with GIS, and this was not part of their scheduled plan, so they shoehorn me in for a few hours whenever they have time. They're preparing master maps for both districts that show exactly every street sign in every location. And your first thought is, oh, they're not that many, until they actually start pulling the numbers. And then he was like, oh, well, there's this one here. And I was like, oh, you're right, there is one there. I didn't even notice it. So we're still working on the counting portion. I think Old Decatur's finished, and he's moving on to 6 into Albany, because he's preparing 3 separate maps. Historic Decatur Station street trees, there's no movement on that yet because they're having discussions on larger programs for the city and where this might fit in, and do we have a beautification program. So there's multiple facets that they're starting. I've been in discussion with Karen Thomas on this. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago and we'll follow up with her. And I had a meeting with Barbara too. So we have very good people who are paying attention to it and what that might look like. Also talked to the urban foresters for both Huntsville and Montgomery to see how their ordinances are set up and how they're handled. Tax credits, Simpson Florist was approved for part 1. They have moved into the part 2 stage, so we're all very excited to see what, fingers crossed on that. Federal grants for 2022-23 have been submitted, the CLG grants that the council approved, commission asked for, so that is Austinville survey, updated design review guidelines, and HSR for stone buildings in Delano. We might not get all, they might say, hey, we've only got enough budget to fund 1 or 2, but as soon as I know, and I'm guessing it'll be 6 weeks or so, I will let the commission know. April walking tour, remember state tourism, April is the Saturday walking tours that we always have. We are booked up. April 2nd is Downtown Crime with John Allison. April 9th is Old Town and Scottsboro Boys with Peggy Towns. April 16th is City Cemetery with Phil Wyrie. April 23rd, I'm doing Albany, and April 30th, Breland is handling streetcars and railroads. So if you want to go visit other cities, we're sorry, you can't do that because we have something every weekend here. So we only have one other thing left on the agenda, and I'm trying to remember how we word it. We're still a public.
The meeting's still public, but because you were going to be potentially voting on individuals who may, for awards that may be viewing, we can turn the webcast off for that portion, but the meeting's still occurring, it's still public. People are still welcome to be in here, but it just keeps the secret a little longer for anyone, and that's all that's going to be discussed during that portion. And since there's no violation of the public meeting by just turning off that recording, since we're still in the public meeting, there's no violation. So we just don't want them to find out. If you can just go ahead and cut the video feed for this point, and then we'll come back, and then you can dismiss the meeting. We'll come back on when
Okay,
we're
so
finished.
video and audio.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the
Okay.
video will
Video
end.
and audio, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you just tell us when you're ready.
Pause it. Because we don't want to spoil the awards that are coming out in May.
You mentioned there's some seminars or something coming up at the end of this month.
I had emailed those out to y'all.
I know, can you re-email them to me?
Yes, I can.
Since they're
The-
lost somewhere
One
on
was
my
the one-
computer.
I think the one that she sent recently was on March 24th. That's the one
Legal-
that's coming
legal
out, and
issues,
it's
that's
the legal
Nashville.
issues coming
Okay.
out in Nashville.
Would you
So
just
I'm
mind
gonna
me sending
send
those?
that
I would appreciate it.
Okay,
Here,
I will resend.
via webinar.
I had a little question, since we're